You've spent the last 30 years trying to minimize last year's tax bill, but nobody has told you that's exactly how you're going to create the biggest lifetime tax bill of your life. In today's video, I'm going to walk through 4 different reasons where it could make sense to do a Roth conversion and some serious tax planning. Number 3 surprises most people, and I'm going to add a bonus in at the end. My name is Kendall Stahl, advisor and partner at 210 Financial, and I've been working for the past 12 years with pre-retirees and retirees that are walking to and through retirement, and one of the biggest things on their mind is I've saved all this money for retirement, but I have a partner in those dollars, and the partner is the IRS, and we haven't been thinking about the taxes that we're gonna have to pay throughout the rest of our life. Most people feel like taxes are fairly manageable, right? They've got their pension, they've got their Social Security, and those are coming in, right? And they don't think that taxes are that big of a part of their retirement plan. But what they're not thinking about is the rest of their life. And so I like to talk about lifetime taxes versus just last year's taxes, because I believe that tax planning can move the needle more than anything else in retirement. So let's get into it. The first thing that we need to do is we need to understand how taxes work and what it means to you. And so if we hop in to my whiteboard, we're gonna see different tax brackets here, right? And so the first thing you need to see is that I'm gonna talk about married filing jointly, but if you're single, everything still applies. It's just your tax bracket's getting cut in half. So 2026, these tax brackets adjust for inflation each year. I'm talking 2026 right now, but the conversation is the same going forward. All right, we got single tax filers. We also have married tax filers filing jointly, okay? And then you'll see we got the tax rates on the side and the different amounts of income that you may be living in. So, for instance, if you're in the 12% bracket, you would be making up to $100,800, all right, if you're married filing jointly. And then as soon as you go over $100,800, you get bumped into the 22% bracket. Okay, so when we think about this, we got to think about, okay, how are these dollars taxed? So the IRS looks at all of us in 3 different buckets of money, all right? And if you've watched any of my videos, you know I talk about these buckets all the time, but tax deferred, all right? And then taxable, and then from there we've got tax-free, okay? And so the bucket that we're gonna be talking about today is mostly this tax-deferred bucket, all right? We're also gonna talk about this tax-free bucket as well, but the tax-deferred bucket, the dollars that live inside of this tax-deferred bucket are things like an IRA or a 401k, all right? And so what happens with that bucket is you put dollars in while you're working and you don't pay taxes when you put them in, but when you poke a hole in this bucket and take money out, that's when you have to pay tax. All right, and so that is considered normal income. So when I say normal income, it's just gonna stack on top of the rest of your income and you're gonna land in one of these tax brackets when you take dollars out of there, okay? And so the idea here is that typically, if you're a pre-retiree, you know, in your 50s, 60s, 70s, most of your money is in this tax-deferred bucket, and that's a tax time bomb that's waiting to go off. The IRS is your partner in that bucket, and you don't really own all those dollars in that bucket because some of it's paid to taxes. Should we be doing tax planning? The answer is yes. Here's kind of 101 tax planning. Roth conversions, okay? And so when are Roth conversions potentially a good idea? The first reason I think it could make sense to do a Roth conversion is if you're going to be in the same or higher income levels when you do retire, or honestly just later in life, all right? And so it goes back to not last year's taxes, lifetime taxes. What do we think our income is gonna look like over the rest of our life? Let's try to project that the best way possible. Okay, so if we pop back up to our tax brackets and we say, all right, well, I'm working, and you know, right now I am, I don't know, let's say we're working and we're in the 22% tax bracket, okay? And so say, you know, you're making 100 to basically 200 grand if we're using round numbers, and let's say you're making 150,000 bucks a year, All right, you're squarely in the 22% bracket. And when you retire, you're going to end up with a pension, maybe some Social Security, and some other form of income that's going to put you right back in that same tax bracket in the 22% tax bracket. But we've still got money that we're going to be taking out of our IRA, and that money's going to come out in the 22% tax bracket. I think that it could make sense to get some taxes paid today as opposed to waiting and paying those taxes later in life. And so what does that look like? Reason number one why we maybe could do a Roth conversion is if you're going to be in the same or higher tax brackets later in life. Let's walk some dollars from this bucket over to this bucket. Yes, when we do that, we have to pay tax. But once we get over here in what we're going to call a Roth IRA, then that money all grows tax-free. So that's the magic behind a Roth IRA is the dollars are growing tax-free. So let's think about your income over the rest of your life and let's decide, are we in a lower tax bracket today or are we going to be in a higher tax bracket in the future, and what makes the most sense going forward? The opposite would apply. If you're going to go backwards in income later in life, maybe a Roth conversion doesn't make sense. I've made a video of that in the past. You can kind of check that out. Reason number two, and I think this one is one that a lot of people miss, and that is not thinking through required minimum distributions. Okay, and so what is a required minimum distribution? Well, a required minimum distribution is basically I've got dollars in this IRA or this 401k, this tax deferred bucket, and whether I want to or not, at some time in your early 70s, right, you got to start taking money out of this bucket, and that's called required minimum distribution, and you have to pay taxes when you do that. I don't think a lot of people think through what that's going to look like. For instance, the prime example of this is someone that has retired and they've done the normal Midwestern things, right? And they've paid off the house and the cars, and they've been grinding for 20, 30, 40 years and saving money in that 401k. And so now they've retired, they're living off their pensions and their Social Securities, and that's more than enough for them to be able to do all the things they want to do, right? So I don't know, let's say they got $80,000 to $100,000 coming in each year from pensions and Social Security, and that's all they need. They're able to travel, they're able to buy the groceries and do all the things because the debts are paid, and they're enjoying life on that income. And just because somebody told them to, they went ahead and were contributing to that 401k or that IRA for all of their working career, and all of a sudden there's $1 million sitting in that IRA, and you're 65 years old. So let's actually play that out a little bit. We've got our bucket of money, and we're gonna say this is an IRA, and we're gonna say there's $1 million in there, and let's say that we're 65 years old, all right? And you know, I don't know, we got $100,000 of income from pensions, and so that's gonna be from pensions and Social Securities. And that's all the money that we need in our lifetime. And that $1 million in the IRA or the 401k that's sitting over here, you know you haven't paid any taxes on. If you haven't watched this video, if you haven't educated yourself, you're probably not going to take money out of this bucket and pay tax because who wants to do that, right? Nobody wants to pay the taxes if they don't have to. So let's run this out. If you're 65 today, required minimum distribution doesn't start until 75 for you. All right, it's based on your birth year. So it could be as early as 72, 73, but if you're 65 today, it's going to be 75. So we got to start taking required minimum distributions. What is that going to look like? Well, the first thing we need to think about is this account was worth $1 million at 65. Okay. Now you're 75 years old. This is 10 years later. You've been living off your income. Life's been good. You've been doing your traveling, all the things, and you've just let that IRA or that 401k sit there and grow. So should we have more than $1 million 10 years later now? We should, right? And it's not unrealistic to think that our million is now $2 million, right? Money double in 10 years, Totally possible. Okay, so now we've got 2 million bucks inside of that IRA. The RMD that you're gonna have to take out of there for argument's sake today, round numbers, is gonna be about $80,000 per year. So it starts at about 4% of whatever's in that bucket. It's a little different for men than women. There's a whole life expectancy calculation table, all that, but just round numbers, trying to make a point today and educate, it's about 4% of whatever's in that bucket when you start taking required minimum distributions out. So if there's 2 million bucks, that's $80,000 a year that you have to take out to make the IRS happy. Do we think that that $80,000 a year could change the tax bracket that you're in, right? You're in the 22, right? $80,000 a year in this instance wouldn't change your tax bracket. But if you were in the 12% bracket, you know, if instead of $100,000 a year, you were making $80,000 a year and you were squarely in this 12% bracket, 80 grand is going to clearly change the tax bracket that you're in. That can be a really strong argument to either A, max out this 22% bracket if you're already there, or B, if you're only in the 12% bracket, let's max the 12 out and potentially even start converting dollars in the 22% bracket, right? And so take dollars out of the IRA and 401k, dump them over here, pay taxes today. Well, taxes are lower than they have been, and get the dollars growing tax-free in that Roth IRA. So to bring number 2 to kind of fruition here, it's let's think through what required minimum distributions are going to look like in the future. Does that change your tax bracket or not? If it does, we need to put some thought into it. Or if we are never going to get back out of the 22% bracket or the 24% bracket or whatever bracket that you're in, but there's a lot of room inside of there, maybe we fill that bracket up now and hedge against taxes going up in the future. Number 3, the one that's gonna surprise you. This is a little more of like an opportunity. It doesn't necessarily say this is why you should do a Roth conversion, but it is an opportunity and a great time to do one. Okay, so when you're retired and you have money invested in the market, nobody likes to lose money, right? But we all know that the market's gonna go up and it's gonna go down, right? And we know it's more about time in the market than timing the market. But man, when the market's down and it's hurting and you're looking at your statements and you're like, daggum, Kendall, like we're losing money. What opportunities do we have in those situations to kind of turn lemons into lemonade, right? And so when the market's down, that actually presents a really good opportunity to do Roth conversions. Why in the world would that be, is what you're thinking. All right, so let's lay the groundwork here. Let's pretend that you have a share of ABC stock, whatever stock it is, and it's worth $100 per share, all right? If you take that share of ABC stock and you convert it from IRA to Roth, you're gonna pay taxes on $100 per share. But and let's say that's up here, all right? It's worth $100 here, all right? ABC stock's worth $100, market's high. Then all of a sudden the market completely falls apart, all right? And the share of ABC stock, for illustrative purposes, we'll just say it gets cut in half, and now it's only worth $50 per share, all right? So this is ABC stock, and it's now only worth $50 a share because it's down here where the market has corrected or that stock has corrected. Okay, we can convert that same single share of ABC stock from IRA to Roth at $50 per share, and you're only gonna have to pay taxes on $50. All right, now, if this is a stock that we believe in, then we know that this stock at some point in time, we hope and we think and we believe that it's gonna come back. So if it comes back now, and now again, it's worth $100 per share, but instead of it being in an IRA like it was here and being taxable, now over here, we have it in a Roth. What happened is we went from $50 a share here to $100 a share here. Is all that growth taxed or is it tax-free? Now it's tax-free because it came back inside of the Roth IRA after you converted it, and the growth inside of Roth IRAs is all tax-free. So we're going to put a link to a summarization of this video down below, and so you can get the key points and the takeaways. So just grab that if this is something that interests you. When it comes to this market situation, converting when the market's down, if your advisor's not calling you and talking through the tax thing, or when the market's down, if maybe they didn't call you and we should have done a Roth conversion, that's something that you should be talking to them about or asking questions about. Number 4, if you're concerned about legacy. All right, so let me set this up for you again. Got my 3 buckets. All right, we're just talking about the tax deferred bucket and the tax free bucket today. And so I'll just label those. And we're talking about walking dollars from here over to here and getting some taxes paid while taxes are lower, or in your situation, it's just a beneficial time to do it. What happens when you're gone? All right, so if you're married, your spouses can inherit the dollars, and this what I'm about to go through doesn't apply. But as soon as it's someone other than your spouse, or I guess a non-for-profit organization, what's gonna happen is in these 2 buckets, they have 10 years, all right? So they got 10 years, your beneficiaries, non-spouse beneficiaries have 10 years to get the dollars out of those buckets, pay the taxes on them, then do whatever they want to do with the rest of the money, all right? But the difference is over here in this tax deferred bucket, they got 10 years to get it out, but when they pull it out, they're gonna have to pay tax. All right, in this tax-free bucket, they still got to get it out in 10 years, but there's just no tax. A couple things to think about here is, number one, if you're really concerned about legacy, or legacy is important to you, leaving your kids or your nieces and nephews, whoever it is, other than your spouse, in a situation that is most beneficial to them, you know, it's going to be a lot more beneficial to leave them these tax-free dollars than these taxable dollars. All right, maybe that's the only thing that matters, right? I do know individuals that it's all about legacy. They don't necessarily care what they pay in taxes. They care that when their kids inherit the dollars, there are no taxes. That's a situation where it can make a lot of sense to convert dollars from IRA to Roth, simply on that emotional level of, I want to leave tax-free dollars to the next generation. But there's also another level of layer of thinking in there. And maybe it's not so much an emotional level, of more of a tactical level. I don't quote me on this, but I think the average age that folks inherit money is like in their early 60s. So I'm gonna say 60 to 65. I'm sure that's not exact, but you get the point. Parents are in their 80s and they pass away, kids inherit dollars in their 60s. All right, well, typically, unless you've retired early, or if you've been successful in just starting into retirement, those can be some of your highest income earning years. So if my dad passes away and leaves me a whole bunch of money when I'm 60 years old and knocking down 200, 300, 400 grand a year, I'm going to be up here in one of these higher tax brackets. Whereas if I'm 70 and all I've got is Social Security and a little bit of pension coming in, and I'm in this 12% bracket, right? Converting dollars from IRA to Roth IRA, so let's say my dad's 70 and he's just got Social Security and pension coming in, he's in the 12% bracket. Converting dollars from IRA to Roth IRA is gonna cost a lot less for him to do it than if he doesn't do it and I, as that 60-year-old, inherits those dollars while I'm still working and I'm clear up here in the 24% bracket, okay? So that's something to think about. If it's important to you, who's inheriting the dollars and at what tax brackets will they be inheriting those dollars? Is it gonna be cheaper for you to pay the taxes while you're alive, or for your kids to pay the taxes? Because it could be the opposite. Your child could be, school teachers do not make enough money and they could be sitting down here in the 12% bracket while you're up here in the 24, then it could actually potentially benefit them to inherit those taxable dollars to where they can pay taxes at a lower tax bracket than what you would be paying them today. There's a 5th one that I think is a bonus and I think is worth thinking about. And this is going to be specifically if you're married, all right? So number 5 that we need to think through is what they call a widow or widower's penalty. As soon as one of you passes away. Now, we obviously don't want to talk about that, but it's highly unlikely that if you're married, you're both going to pass away at the same time, all right? And so what does that mean to you? It means that you're gonna go from filing taxes. Okay, so if you don't both pass away at the same time, you're going to go from filing taxes as a married couple filing jointly here to a single tax filer the next year. It means that you're going to get to those jumps in taxes a lot quicker. So if you see here, the single tax filer, the 12% bracket goes up to $50,400. The married filing jointly goes up to $100,800. So the single tax filer tax brackets are literally cut in half. So you're gonna blow through those a lot quicker, and you're gonna get to those higher tax rates sooner as well. So a lot of times there's a reduction of income when someone passes away, but also an increase in taxes. And so as a bonus, that's a good reason to be doing Roth conversions, to know that when someone passes away, meaning when one of you passes away, we're not gonna go screaming up in tax brackets. All right, so to pull all of this together, these different colored lines are the different tax rates. So you'll see down here, there's the key for it all, right? The two blue lines, the 10 to 12%, and the green is the 22%. All right, so hypothetically, you know, in these blue columns here, that's the income that you have. All right, and so I want to illustrate a few things. Pensions and Social Securities, we're maxing out that 12% bracket. We're not bumping into the 22. But then all of a sudden, you see an increase here where we jump from the 12% bracket into the 22% bracket, and there's a large increase. What is that? We talked about reason number 2, required minimum distributions. All of a sudden, they reach those ages. I think this was a married couple. One of them turned 75 here, and we got our first bump. The next one turned 75 here. We got our second bump. All of a sudden, now we're well in the 22% bracket and almost getting to the 24% bracket, okay? Then you'll see this reduction here. That's when one of the individuals passed away. And that's to the point that I was just making. The bonus number 5 is that we screamed right through those tax brackets a lot quicker, and there's more money in that next tax bracket when someone passes away, okay? So that's something to be thinking about. Here's an idea. Again, this is just an idea for educational purposes only. This is by no means maximized, or it's just something I wanted to show you. So the light blue colors or columns down here are, you know, no Roth conversions. We jump up and then we end up paying more taxes when someone passes away. All right, the dark blue is, hey, what if we do Roth conversions for a while and we're able to pay more taxes today while taxes are on sale, and then get to the point before required minimum distribution age where those RMDs are a lot less and we stay in a much more comfortable tax bracket. And then when someone passes away, we don't go screaming up in tax brackets as well. All right, thanks for watching. And don't forget, these are the 4 or 5 reasons why we should do Roth conversions, but I also made a video right here that are a few reasons why maybe you shouldn't do a Roth conversion. Check that out too.